I was chatting to a young environmental ecologist with I think a master's or whatever yesterday. So we have some incredible discussions about like the elephant in the Kruger National Park, being environmental architects and this whole thing of creating migratory corridors and that sort of thing, which is it's really interesting stuff. And how the people that are the environmentalists within the ecological community are like, okay, this is what we need to do. But then the surrounding owners of property aren't on the same page. So it's like, this is my property and I own it, and these elephants are now coming and damaging my property. And instead of like allowing them to go through once or twice or whatever, and then establishing where they want to sort of use as their corridors, and then like allow that to happen, even if it is fencing off a reasonable sort of corridor for them to go through so that they're well fed. And of all of the environmental mistakes that were made regarding elephant, those things could be sorted out if people changed the way they thought and lived in the world. And
sure.
Yeah. So, yeah. So
yeah, I was having that kind of thinking, I don't know, the past day or two, listening to some audio tapes and things. And to me, it just kept on coming up to, but what if people are selfish and don't want to change? And we see this all the time, certainly in American politics is a great example. So how do we, even if it makes absolute sense that something happens, people still hold on to their, but it's mine card, or my ownership, my selfishness, my right to make my own decision. And I totally get that. And also that's what keeps progress from happening in so many areas, especially in this, especially in sustainability and environmentalism. And now I had another tag onto that, so I just lost it.
It's okay.
Well, I know what it was. It was just, it had to do with the business perspective on things, and how, well, that might be nice, but that would ruin my business or ruin my, the industry I've been destroying the earth with for decades and decades. And now you want to take my money away?
Yeah, it's like that. I was looking at the New Zealand, like the sheep wool industry is in collapse because of synthetic fabrics that are being manufactured and used in the clothing industry. You can see that sort of clothing used in yoga and that sort of the stretchy fabrics, and it's all synthetic, it's not wool.
Yeah.
And not cotton either. So, but
right.
then you look at the number of sheep and the few people who own these huge expanses of land with like incredible numbers of sheep roaming the land. And that means deforestation. That means like very few people are now able to live on the land. And for us to transition to sustainable way of living, those things have to go. It's like they can't be, it's like we've created a false paradigm, like the banana republics. It's like the whole of Middle America and down into South America, all with the Cavendish bananas. It's like, what are we doing? Just so, we can have bananas on every person's plate in America. That whole region has been militarized and turned into big business for the benefit of a few, like the corporate owners of this paradigm. And all of those people are enslaved. Their land is taken, their food, their water, their rights, their whatever, they are oppressed. It's like this change in the paradigm is really about decentralization and diversity and ecological recreation of diverse ecosystems where humans are integrated back into living sustainably on the land as one with it. So, of course, there is going to be this transition phase, which is not going to be easy for the owners of the corporations and for governments that enforce the ownership and whatever. So it's going to be a tumultuous or like extreme change. But yeah, you know, and then you think about how did humans end up in this messed up paradigm of being centralized into cities, and it's mainly driven by wars and for ownership and whatever, and people driven into fear and driven into squatter camps, or what would you call them, driven into refugee camps and driven into cities, their land taken away, their basic human rights, their land, food and water taken away. And it's like the fear-based paradigm has now centralized them. It's not just like you were suggesting the other day that, oh, the children don't want to be out on the farms where they have to work so many long hours a day to live. That way of thinking and that way of producing food in huge amounts for very, very little profit to sustain a city, they have been like enslaved on their own land to produce for the unsustainable cities. Yep. So, but if it were not that paradigm and it was more of it's a wonderful place to live in nature as one with it, because you're not enslaved to it because of the abundance that is growing around you. You just live as one with it. It's a beautiful place to be. But the paradigm changed, and the way of manufacturing larger and larger, like bigger and bigger herds and bigger and more production per mile of or square hectare or of land, all of those changes happened subtly. And before they knew it, they were enslaved into, like, I don't know, even chicken production. It's like these huge warehouses with great expense to create them, and then having huge amount of chickens kept in the dark and trampling all over one another and so on. And just to produce enough money to pay back the bankers and whatever, keeping ultimately those people enslaved to a system that keeps the system going, but at great expense to the chickens, to the people, to the blah, 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 blah. It's the whole paradigm has enslaved, like, even the people who are producing the wool or the food or the whatever for the system, and ultimately destroyed the land. The people, having been caught up in that, have lost the desirability to be on the land and to be like creating an ecological, biodiverse, beautiful place to live. So of course it becomes hard work. It's like, yeah, why do I want to do all of this work when I can go and just sit at a desk in an office and be creative and make lots of money and drive around in a Porsche and, you know, have the house, the car, the picket fence? It's like, why would I do that when I can have this and I can have all of the girlfriends I want, you know, because, you know, I've got lots of money and wealthy in a city, you know? So yeah, it is that big transition from the destructive paradigm to the paradigm we need to live in.
Yeah. I don't have any comments on it, Dennis. Yeah, it's what's going on, and it's so entrenched and embedded into modern society. Yeah, how do you unravel it and show people a better way and have them choose that better way? And I know that's a lot of what our discussions are about, but it's a major concern. Even if I had this conversation with somebody yesterday, at least I used this phrase like, better the devil you know than the one you don't. Like people are willing to sit in their hell because, well, at least this is familiar to me. It's gotten to that point.
Yeah, that's so true. It's like everything that we're doing to get back to who we need to be requires an extension, an extra effort from ourselves. Like we need to go out and learn how to forage. we need to go and learn how to live sustainably. And each one of those things requires learning and application to become those people who can now live sustainably on the land. And not only that, it's like regrowing the ecosystems that we need to live sustainably. It takes time, commitment, physical effort, the willingness to take on another project and another project and another project and to get each project going and to get it functioning and then move on to the next one and to the next one and to the next. It's sustainability in that sense has to be grown. Every project is, are we going to use composting toilets, or are we going to actually just set aside an area of land and that's our toilet? And then we'll move from that area of land to this area of land. What is our journey of fertilizing soil and whatever, and then moving on from one to the next? And what is our plan? To be able to do this efficiently and effectively, we have to plan the movement of wild stock across the land to be able to fertilize the land. All of these are like, we can accelerate our growth into incredible sustainability, but we have to give it a lot of thought, be really connected to the land, be able to see what all the variables are, and design it to be able to happen more quickly, because we can accelerate sustainable living, but it requires a lot of learning and a lot of effort to be able to get there.
Yep, I agree with that as well. We're used to the easy way out and the comfort way. So even the word sustainable is the word anathema comes up. It's against everything that modern society, modern throwaway society is about. And, that's deeply ingrained in us. It's a paradigm shift of thinking from the way it's been since World War II, I would say, probably, maybe even before that, but certainly in my lifetime, where people are just so used to chucking things away.
Yeah. I think at this point, maybe what we should do is like have a look at what I've written.
Okay.
All right. So this is Help Save Our World Speak number 93. And although it's under the section of sustainability, it's the awakening, the taking back of our lives, taking back our responsibility, memory, knowledge, skills, and natural wisdom for our lives is fundamental to our sustainable existence. The time of human specialization into dumbed down, factory wage enslaved, religiously indoctrinated cogs in the machine is over. It is the time of awakening, enlightenment, and wisdom, with which we journey towards a sustainable future beyond this age of oppression and ignorance. On this sustainability journey, we're applying what we have learned on our quest for the truth, change, and transformation, and using it to transition to living in our new sustainable love-based paradigm. These times are about changing our way of life, transforming and transitioning towards the golden age of reason, where we live in love, balance, and harmony with our environment. So becoming adaptable with a great variety of knowledge, skills, and wisdom is essential to understanding the big picture and creating that sustainable future, which we have to do if we wish to continue to exist as humans on this planet, and if we wish for life to continue to exist on this planet. Knowledge is power. So fearless, well-informed, skilled, and wise people are capable of creating a fair, happy, healthy, and sustainable future in which we all deserve to live. Empowered with critical thinking and reasonable logic, they cannot be lied to or be taken advantage of by others ever again. The human mind and behavior must once again become the repository or the hard drive of knowledge, skills, and natural wisdom, and other sustainable living practices. Because when civilizations collapse, all technology and stored knowledge on the electronic media or electronic systems of our world and in books and whatever, stored knowledge is lost. Then, of course, what is likely to rise to prominence? The knowledge and the wisdom that we carry within us? Or is it going to be the tyrannous dark ages of religious dominance again? Because those power bases are not going to let go unless we institutionalize or embrace the knowledge which we want to carry forward into the future. After the collapse, all that lives on is in our hearts and in our minds. It's in what we practice daily and teach our children. Our language usage, nursery rhymes, stories we tell, and the sayings like, never sell the goose that lays the golden egg. Just using an analogy or just a way of thinking about that, when thinking about land and the ecosystems that continuously provide for life in the long term, land is priceless. So never sell the land that gives you life and sustains your life. And that's, of course, would include water and plant life and animal life and everything that sustains life around you. We must continuously take back our knowledge and wisdom of life and creativity and all those things from specialized governments, companies, corporations who keep us ignorant. We do this by sharing knowledge and practicing and developing individual and community skills and expertise to create our new future. Now, just think of that as a concept. The centralization of knowledge and wisdom and power, it's like taking it away from us. And it's become like everyone else does everything for us and we don't do anything for ourselves. So we've lost that knowledge. Never give away our knowledge and wisdom and our creative power to corporations. We must practice it based on our basic human needs. I think that's where we need to start. You know, everything that expands up the hierarchy of needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, is great, but we need to ensure sustainability. We need to begin with what our basic human needs are. And those are safety, security, and whatever. So just an example is most of us buy soap and are clueless about making it. So learning how to make it will preserve that knowledge and that skill after the societal collapse. Okay, do you want to talk about anything there?
Nope, I'm in agreement.
All right. So in these times, thanks to the internet, We have access to so much knowledge and information. Although sifting through the enormous amount of disinformation and nonsense that that's exploded at the moment is a waste of precious time. But with our excellent, what we've put out there, knowledge and education, anybody empowered with that can see straight through the lies and deception and take what they need and leave the rest. But if you're uninformed or unskilled, or you don't have this knowledge that we have provided, you put yourself in a very precarious situation of being like distracted and waylaid and returned into negative paradigms. You really put yourself in danger. So this, what we've created so far, is so invaluable to creating that sustainable future that we are all looking to create. Now, books generally last longer than electronic media after societal collapse. Sometimes, if it's in a cold region, people might be burning the pages of books just to light fires and so on. They are a form of institutionalization essential to ensure the longevity of our paradigm and sustainable future. But books, of course, don't last forever either, especially when printing presses and printing technology and even languages are lost. Because languages are dynamic, and although you might have had the Egyptian language in that time, when people move on and move into different isolated areas, languages themselves actually are directly related to the society and the culture you live in. So languages are dynamic and they do change. And of course, if they're isolated, they become totally different languages. And then at a later time, in a later age or whatever, looking back, we now can't read the Egyptian language. We like, we don't know what they were saying with their pictographs and their whole language that's even like to create that permanence, painted onto walls and like etched into walls. And even then, it hasn't been sustainable through time. And it's not that long a period of time either. It's a couple of thousand years and bam, we don't know what they wrote, relatively speaking. I mean, there are people who spend their lives trying to decipher it, but really, do we really know what it is? Anyway, that's why dispersed community hubs, STEVEs, Sustainable Teaching Eco-Villages, are necessary to spread the knowledge, skills, and wisdom so humanity remembers and carries that knowledge into the future. Sustainable Teaching Eco-Villages would ensure that human knowledge and wisdom continue. Now, hopefully we don't have an age of they know where the knowledge is carried, and then, of course, they're going to go and kill and destroy those eco-villages just so they can perpetuate their religious paradigm. It's really important that even if we have to run and return or run and create other eco-villages in other places, that we perpetuate this sustainability paradigm. However, even if we lose everything and have to go back to the basics of learning from Mother Nature, no matter how we interpret it, the fundamental language of nature and the universe is written indelibly into nature's vibrations, patterns, flows. It's in nature all around us. You can see and know it if you're only willing to spend time looking, sensing, seeing, and experiencing it, because that wisdom is there. You just got to know how to read that nature's book of wisdom. It's there, right in front of you. So ultimately, for us in eco-villages, and our sustainability. But just before I say that, it's like, so nature has this, but it takes time, and it takes, living sustainably for us to be able to spend that time to read the book of nature and to say, oh my gosh, that's what it is. Everything's vibrations, everything's energy. Even rocks are expanding and cooling and giving and receiving energy. There's light all around us. So what's happening? Energy is being received by the plants and radiated outwards, and we're receiving it. It's like, oh, we live in this connected universe. All of that wisdom is there. But for us to reconstruct it after we had lost it totally, if humans survive and into the future because we didn't choose to live sustainably, it would be like a huge journey back. Like right now, we have to make sure that we hang on to this. So ultimately, we will fail if we don't practice using and teaching the knowledge, the skills, the wisdom, and the arts. And of course, practice it.
So my thinking on it is, there are so many mega trends happening on Earth. Certainly, the institutional paradigm is one. The using Earth as an unlimited resource without any consideration is another. And we go on and on. So that to have thinking of sustainability in thought, and like even through political regimes, you might get 15 or 20 years of one particular party or concept running a country, and then it gets flipped. I was listening to something yesterday, and they were just talking about the government of Germany in the past 100 years, and just how many times it's flipped and what it's gone through in order to go from one to the other. And so how do we create sustainability of thought and commitment? Well, obviously we know how it's done because there are mega trends that are doing it, though unfortunately they're not in the sustainability direction. But how do we maintain that thought and that independence even of sustainable systems when there are other systems competing for the land, or if they're not competing for the land, they want the land, period. It's not a competition. It's just taking. And, you just look at the world governments that we have right now and how many renegade authoritarian, and just threatening with atomic weapons. Even just a handful of them can shift the dynamic of the world. So these are just rhetorical questions. I don't have an answer. I wish I did. But I think it's the nature, at least from what I understand, it's the nature of human beings to move beyond something that they have, unless it's total comfort and they don't realize that. And even I think at that point, people in total comfort, even if it's enslaved comfort, will still rebel at some point because they don't want to have the same old, or maybe they become aware of the system that they're in that they weren't aware of before. So is it that we just have to participate in these small pop-up sustainability, enclaves, or can we actually shift humankind's thought processes to sustainability, let's say? And in many ways, I think sustainability is also against the general trend in thinking and maybe even innate desires of people. We want change for the most part. Now, I'm not a sociologist speaking here, so I'm just giving my opinion, but it seems like progress, whatever that means, and it could mean just something different to many people, is built into our DNA, at least it has been. what they do with our DNA moving forward, erase that particular trait from us, which obviously is being trended now with the biological advances that we're able to do. It's a big question. I align with you in that we need to do what we can in the direction that we believe in and that we can see is probably the better direction. But do we know that in the long term? I don't know. So
Yeah.
that continues to pop up. Is it always an uphill battle to fight for this, or is it a thought and a belief system that will take hold? And even saying that, a belief system then creates its own demise, I guess. How do we get it so that we can change the world? Or as we say here, save our world. And again, big questions. And this is a very rapidly changing civilization we live in right now. And with all the advances in communication and tools and everything else, we're still screwing up. I'll end it there.
That's fascinating. The simple principles is progress, first of all, can be seen and is often seen from the starting point of the unsustainable paradigm. It's like progress is to go and put in a big dam to provide water for this massive city. And that's not progress. That is destroying all of nature downstream. It's destroying the livelihood and whatever of all of the people who live on the lands below that point if they can't afford water. And quite often that's a problem in California, So it's so because all of the big the owners of the water table, because they own the land where the water table is, can now charge a certain amount of money, and the people who can't afford to pay for that water can't grow what the huge nut groves or whatever are growing, because they can afford the water, and they get a special price because they have these huge lands and they use a large volume of water. And so, what is progress? Progress is the journey to sustainability, to living, ensuring that life goes on the planet. To me, that's beyond question. But to somebody who is stuck in that old paradigm, progress is becoming richer and more powerful and taking more and warring and plundering to subjugate people, to get more, to become more wealthy and more powerful. And then for the exclusive group of people like living in America, life is easy, so easy. Why? Because the rest of the world is being plundered and taken advantage of, and the resources are being taken into that system to create a wealthy society. So for those people, progress is having a cheap rent and cheap fuel and whatever, and all of the things to make their lives even more merrier in the party that they're on, because it's a party at the expense of the rest of the world. And ecologically, the rest of the world is dying to give that centralized American society the wealth and the comfort and whatever that it's living in. But is that progress? No, it's not, because ultimately that American society depends on the sustainability of the whole planet to continue to exist. The pollution, the destruction of rainforests, and therefore the quality of oxygen, and the pollution of the air, of the atmosphere, and the pollution of the oceans, and so on and so on and so on. And our world on a mega scale, because of the mega consumption of that in American society, and I'm not just referring to America, I'm talking about all societies that live on these principles. I'm just using America as the prime example because America takes it to the ultimate capitalistic extreme. And just because I've got the money, I've got the power, I can buy the land, I can take everything I want. And if I don't get what I want, I'll go to war and I'll steal it anyway. That's the premise of plundering the commons. It's like, if you don't give it to me, I'm going to take it by force and I will enslave you to do my bidding. And that is like horrendous. And it's like, to me, the biggest robbery of life, of everything, of all time. We are, I mean, that whole, we are rich, we are powerful, we have the right to take whatever we want because we've been taking whatever we want with force for so long. And it's not sustainable. A pyramid scheme, plundering a planet, there's limits to what you can take, and then there's no more to take, and then it's over. So at what stage does the human consciousness say, look, we can see what's happening, it's enough? At what stage do we do that as mature adults of our time? You know, it's like, yeah, the principles of the ancients and whatever, only take what you need and continuously give back to ensure a sustainable future. It's basic, simple, natural wisdom, but we're not living by it because we can steal and plunder, and then we blame other people for stealing what we have already stolen. It's like somebody
Right.
comes onto your land and starts eating the mealies that you've grown in huge expanses of corn, or mealies as we call them. Then they're criminals and they should be shot and whatever. They're thieves. But we stole your land, so you can't grow your own mealies, so, you know, or your own corn. It's like the logic has like a timeline on it. It's like, we're the good guys because we're growing all this food to provide food for the cities, but why do those cities exist? Because we stole the land from you in the first place.
Yep.
It's like,
well, they found a way to create sustainability in their con game, haven't they?
absolutely.
It's gaslighting to the extreme.
Action, that's it. It's lies upon lies. It's like,
Yeah.
why are governments so terrified of their government secrets being told? Because ultimately the system is literally a house of cards built on lies upon lies upon lies upon lies. And ultimately, when the truth is revealed, it's like, oh, this is what we're doing. And then the truth gets, and then eventually the house of cards just goes,
yeah,
because it's not sustainable. It's like,
well, just as a current example, and then the thinking about how you punish people or how one gets punished if they're fighting that system. I mean, look at the scorched earth campaign that Putin is waging in Ukraine. And it's bombing cities to rubble in the 21st century just does not make sense to somebody who's thinking. But as I go beyond this, and why would somebody do this? Just, put poisonous shells and munitions in cities, in advanced cities of the world. And you could care less. And we've heard the atrocities about killing people on the way out. And it's just this, they really don't care about the people or the society. And again, I'm just using Putin as the example here, but it's endemic throughout history, I'm sure, where it's, if I can't have it, nobody can. So that would be the one thing. I want to take it if I want it. The other thing is what's wanted out of the Ukraine. And I think, we're not really sure. It's certainly not, we want this land to create a nice population of people, because it could care less about the people there. And in many ways could care less about the cities or the structure that's in the Ukraine. It's, I want something there. I'm guessing it's resources or access to resources or keeping the resources from other countries in the world. I don't know. Could be just the Russian form of imperialism. But as we look at these huge campaigns that are so against everything that you and I are talking about as far as sustainability, like it just doesn't make sense. But that it doesn't make sense doesn't stop it from happening. And that's the scary part, is that these outliers, I'll call them, even though they're seeming to be more like the main system, they just don't seem to work with the common sense that you and I are talking about. It's through the filters of power, of ownership, of profitability, of ego, and has nothing to do with the people that are occupying the land. And we've seen it. Look, in this country, we know the horrors that happen to the Native Americans over time. And we've certainly seen it. Look, around the world, there are pogroms still going on. Your sect of religion can't live in our country anymore. So, we're going to push you out to another country that can't hold you, can't sustain you, and maybe even has no interest in taking you in. But it's happening everywhere, on every continent. So I don't have an answer for it. It's just still that question of, how do we sustain a thought process that's kind to humans, that is human based? I think there's so many competing forces now that have taken over the philosophical mind, that people can then use as an excuse. Like, yeah, I stole this from you, but if you steal it from me, then I have the right to hurt you. It's like, wait a minute. But that's where power comes in. That's where that aspect of humanness comes in. Desire to power, desire to control and dominate. And, I don't come from that perspective, so I can't really speak into why they think that way and why that's a trend. But we know that it exists. And how we shift that, well, I don't think we're going to be able to shift that in your and my lifetime. Even the second coming won't get everybody on the same page. There are many people that will fight that, no, that's not the real one. Ours is the real one. So how we shift this to make it a more equitable life for more and more humans and animals on the planet and the earth itself, I don't know. But like you and I have said many times, but we don't have any alternative to not do it. Because when we give up, then as far as you and I are concerned, everybody's given up. So we have to continue. We have to promote and pass the ideas. And, maybe we'll find that we're not at the tipping point. It very well could be, Dennis, that you and I have been sold the bill of goods on how much the earth can take and how many people it can support. And maybe we're just still in that uneducated, keep them ignorant bottom of the heap of the world. And the powers that be, whatever that means, are happy to disseminate end of the world scenarios in order for us to either resign or to continue to tilt at windmills, as maybe what we're doing. So I don't know. It's just a perspective, and you and I have our perspectives only from the small plot of space on Earth that we take and what goes on up here. I don't know where I was going with that. It just seemed to be a vein I wanted to open up as far as who knows. So when one doesn't know, I think you do two things. You resign and play the game, or you continue to push to see if what you believe is viable. And again, having that end of the world scenario on top of what we're trying to do is definitely a means of domination and control to keep us from even pushing towards what might be a better world. At least my thoughts for now.
Well, that's interesting. That can have two effects. Like the one is you're too terrified to do anything about it and you just give up. Or it can be the motivation that we need by the fact that we have the knowledge, the skills, and the wisdom to actually go into this frame of mind that we have to do something, and we start doing it. And I think the COVID thing, with that 2 or so years of being in a situation where things weren't as normal, and then of course with global warming being pushed by vice president, whatever. So there are these forces that are saying to us, we're in this trouble. But if you do your research from a lot of scientists around the world, they are proving emphatically that these are things that are happening. These are trends. And just from my own physical experience of being out there in the oceans of the world and traveling the world and seeing places of so many different places, having lived as long as I have, it's blatantly clear what's actually happening. So it's not just, to me, a fear-based strategy by those in power who are actually making us or disempowering us. I think this is essential knowledge that has to get out there to everyone. And we're not just saying that there are all these terrible things happening. We're saying, here is the alternative. This is how you can think about it, and this is what you can do. And these are very real, practical solutions. This is the way nature works. This is what you need to know, and this is how you need to apply it to become sustainable and therefore to ensure that life goes on, because that's the whole reason we exist. We exist to ensure that life goes on. We don't exist to make owners rich and powerful and all that sort of thing. I mean, that's stupidity. And then, of course, the fact that there are all of these powerful groups of people, their power only stems from us. Without humans supporting their power-based systems, they have no power. So we can have the responsibility to take back our power of knowledge, skills, wisdom, and move away from their systems of control and power. Just by growing your own vegetables and not going to the store, you've disempowered that system, and you've empowered yourself with food. Yep. And by capturing your own water, you've empowered yourself, your basic rights now to food and water. Land, ultimately, when those systems collapse, the availability of land is going to be immense. Bam. And that can happen overnight. And it's really about the power of our purchases, the power of our choices, the power of us gaining the knowledge, skills, and wisdom we need to empower ourselves to grow our own food and whatever. True power does not reside in the hands of the few who are in power. It's in our hands. It's in our wish to create a sustainable future. It's in our wish to create a healthy life for ourselves. It's in our desire to breathe fresh air and drink from mountain streams and springs and live a healthy, sustainable life. That is the key. It's like, do we choose that, or do we choose to keep on polluting and destroying our planet until there's no way we can survive on this planet? It really comes down to that. And we have the power, and knowing that we have the power. And then, of course, learning what we need to know to have the power, because we don't have the power if we don't gain the knowledge, skills, and wisdom that we need. So, yeah. Yes, and I just want to go back to a point, and it might be a sore point, and I don't want to upset you or anything, but Putin is doing a lot of terrible things. But through the time of American history that I was like really into studying it and so on, I don't think there's been a more abusive country in the world to people around the world than America. It's the most horrendous. Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam. You just go like Cambodia and blah 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 blah, and then not just the wars. You go to provide for their resources. How many overthrows of the people's representatives and the putting in power of tyrannous leaders to ensure that they get the resources and the whatever they want from those countries, and that those people are subjugated and driven into cities. And they have done that around the world and on a horrendous level. It's like when you start to like really do the research, and if you've lived through it like I have, just I don't know, it just blows my mind. So America is not the only one. Of course, before that, the dominant colonial power was England, and it wasn't just that power. There were all of these Western powers like throughout history. But then, of course, it's like, oh, is it Western powers? No, but Russia's doing the same thing, and the Chinese and whatever. It's like around the world, this concept of just plundering the world to make the rich richer and be in power and dominate over the masses as the providers, the gods of the solutions to the problems of the people, and then the taking away of the land, food, and water, the basic human rights and everything to the people and enslaving them. That is like the most evil thing that's ever happened. But it's not just Putin, and it's not just America. It's all of those power-based systems, those pyramid schemes that are in place around the world. So I don't think it's right to just point at one person or one whatever, but not saying that anything that he's doing is right. I'm saying that all of that nonsense that's going on in the world is not right. Empires and kings and queens and kingdoms and governments and all of those things are fundamentally despicable.
And yet, that's what runs the world, isn't it? There are very few countries out here that are like maybe Bhutan, where their national product is happiness, and is Bhutan. Yeah, very few places where that purity exists anymore. And look, we had Genghis Khan. We had how many of the the conquerors of the past as well. And yeah, it's just part of our history that's the way things go. And we may clean it up in one area of the world, and it'll pop up somewhere else, and they'll come and invade the clean area. So maybe that's the nature of humanity that we really just have to own up to, that until it changes, and I would like to say until it changes organically, but there are people looking to manipulate it chemically and aerosolly and so many other ways to maintain their system of the ability to dominate control. So yeah, we got a lot to deal with.
Yeah, but really, when it comes down to it, these pyramid schemes have a fundamental paradigm. And ultimately, it's the paradigm, the way of thinking, the way of living in the world, and the way of like plundering and whatever is like a gang logic that is embedded in our religious belief systems. And it's really about the paradigm shift to us understanding that we are one with nature and life and with everyone else on this planet. If we can sort of achieve that ultimate breakthrough of realizing the oneness and that we have to coexist if we wish to survive into the future. I think it really is at that level of individual awakening that we realize that, oh my gosh, unless we change this paradigm, and of course, we're going to have to, at some stage, maybe stand up for one another. Like you have all these eco-villages, but somebody has decided to subjugate or whatever an eco-village down the road. And all of the people of all the eco-villages make a stand for that eco-village. Because wars of chicanery and all of that takes energy, and that energy is very directed. Maybe it's a run and a return, like the Vietnamese did. When the war machine comes through, you either hide or you run away. And then the moment the machine has passed through, you come back and you carry on growing your stuff, so that there is never a transfer of ownership. There's just, it's just like the war machines pass through, like their concerted monetary, expensive, like destruction or whatever happens, but then you go in and you just make it again. And that's why they brought in napalm and all that sort of thing to try and kill the plants so that the people could not return, but the people just carried on. So, yeah.
Well, it's the indomitable spirit of humans in many ways. It's just the pain in the ass that we have to go through this this challenge of terror and horror to get to the other side all the time, because those people won't play fair. And I that sounded kind of facetious as I said it, but it wasn't. It's, constantly keep them on their toes, give and take away, give and take away. And, there's this cosmic, at least on Earth. So let's say it's a global, not reality, but just this global haze of that's the game, and it seems to be that. And people are willing to take the sides because they think it's a game. Has nothing to do with living, nothing to do with being a human being, nothing to do with awareness of the earth and appreciation for the earth. It has to do with them playing a game, whether it's the game of servant, the game of, master. I'm sorry, Dennis, my thoughts are going. You can see that I'm kind of close to thoughts, but not quite close enough today.
It's not. It's just one more thing before we go. It's the time is up. Is to me, this is like, it's not human nature. It's humans are schooled and indoctrinated and into this paradigm as a continuous process. So of course that comes back to our concept of a new education system where people are schooled into living sustainably. So it really comes back to that. It's like, it's only through knowledge, skills, and wisdom and enlightenment and wisdom that we rise above this time of the past and create that as our nature. Our nature is within the nature of nature. It's like we are now educated to be one with who we fundamentally are and as one with nature. And then it's not our human nature to be destructive and whatever. It's our human nature to live as one in a love-based paradigm with Mother Nature.
Yeah. Well, how we get that spread?
Yeah.
How we get that spread so that it's the way of the world, I guess, is the big question. And there have been some major religions that started out with that maybe good thought, and then morphed into something else, whether they got waylaid by internal struggles, or somebody decided, yeah, that's nice, and we can use this to make even more power and control. So how do we get that spread globally quickly and acted on immediately? I guess
That's your challenge.
Yeah,
That's your challenge in your next video, is it not?
there you go.
Anyway, so yeah, no, I think that we just have to keep on trying. It's like that's the journey, and I think as we're going, we're gaining more clarity. So maybe we're doing something right.
Yeah. Well, it's not a new concept, certainly in my lifetime since I was a teenager. The reaction to the Second World War. First it went into, I guess, the beatniks, but then it moved into the love generation, and there was a huge push in our youth in order to have that be the paradigm that we operate out of. And I think it had a big impact, and obviously millions and millions of people took it in, and some people still live out of it.
Yeah.
And we've also had a world that's been very strange, parallel to the people that are believing in that concept, that love will take us through. So but we have to keep trying. Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you so much for making this time on a not a normal day. I appreciate it. And yep.
All right,
talk
man.
about this forever and ever and ever.
Yes. To live another day.
Much. Yeah. Thanks a lot. It was great chatting to you.
All right, Dennis.
All right. Take it easy.
I'll do that. You too.